Welcome to the Growth, Grace, and Prosperity Podcast. Join Stewart Heath for down-to-earth conversations with top professionals, entrepreneurs, and leaders who have a story to tell. Let's get rolling.
Hello, everyone. I'm Stewart Heath, founder and CEO of Harvard Grace Capital, back with another episode of the Growth, Grace, and Prosperity Podcast. Thank you for joining us. You're going to be glad you did. When we hear the story of David Pollack, we're just getting to know each other a little bit before the show. David, thank you so much for taking the time.
Yeah, thanks for having me on, Stuart.
Yes, sir. Everybody with the C title in their name has no time, so we really do appreciate you taking some of yours and sharing it with us. Okay, David, when you think back over your career, and you've done a lot of things, but was there a moment that you'd call a game changer? Lots of people have more than one game-changing moment, but it puts you on the path to where you are now at the top of your organization versus where you perhaps thought you were going to be.
Yeah, so I want to say probably sometime in the military. Before I went into the military, there was not my path before the military was untraditional, I should say, right?
Interesting.
And when I got into the military, after some time there, I started to realize what I'm truly capable of. And one of the things that the military helped me understand was organizational structure. And at some point, I started to look around and feel like there was more out there for me. The military started changing and adjusting in a way that I didn't necessarily align with. And I decided to kind of make that move into the civilian sector. And when I got into the civilian sector, I had a realization in there as well, right? I said to myself, wow, this is broken, right? Like the military had policies, regulations, they had the rule books for everything. Everything was crafted exactly how it needed to be. And in the civilian sector, you have private organizations, and when you get into them, they have a difficult time organizing those things like the military had it, right? At some point, I went into manufacturing companies. My background is in logistics and supply chain management. And when I got out of the military, I went back home to Brooklyn for about a month. And, I said, well, I left New York for a reason. So my background, there was more opportunities in the Midwest in Wisconsin. So I drove out there and I figured out life in the Midwest in Wisconsin, the Milwaukee area. And, it took me a little bit to kind of get settled there. And I ended up getting my first position in the civilian sector in a manufacturing company. The whole team there was awesome. It was perfect for my transition out of the military. People were more hands-on, people were more approachable. And their systems needed some help, right? Their operational systems needed some help internally. And I worked pretty quickly in regards to coming up with solutions. And I found myself where I kind of maxed out there, right? And I needed a new challenge. Ended up in another manufacturing company after. After that manufacturing company, once again, I create solutions pretty quickly. There was a lot of great achievements within the small time that I was there, and it was on to the next challenge. And I ended up in a transportation company. After that transportation company, I completely understood that me continuing to kind of look for new challenges was not going to look good for me at some point, right? Like it makes it look as if I'm just jumping from place to place, although I'm creating massive solutions within these organizations. So I made a decision to kind of go off on my own and figure out, one thing that I always understood about myself was that I wanted to be part of something that was bigger than me. And I wasn't necessarily finding that in the civilian sector. So I made a decision to kind of go off on my own and figure some things out on my own. Started my first company in Wisconsin. It was a printing company. Uh, it from the outside looking in, it did not go well. But I did a lot of learning about what was important in business. On the operations side, right? When you're engulfed in the operations, you think that's the beating heart, right, of the organization. And what you don't realize is sales is. So, there was some key things that I learned during that first go around on my first business. Um, and then, I had the opportunity, I learned about the telematics industry from my brother-in-law, and I had the opportunity to get into an industry that I felt was aligned with kind of creating something that would be bigger than me, right? The telematics industry is a growing industry. At the time, it was moving into commercialization, where everybody was adopting the technology, and there's a disconnect with consumer technology and B2B technology, right? For consumer technology, you can go on an app and you can have your Uber driver here right away, right? With B2B technology, you're making a phone call, you're sending out emails, you're waiting for responses back. If that one person didn't call, you're calling another vendor, and the time for that to take, right? You're essentially building these internal vendor management programs to these fragmented internal vendor management programs to essentially support your business operations, right? And I seen this tremendous gap in opportunity to essentially create an application to be able to kind of enhance that experience on the B2B side. And that's what textbook is, right? But initially, when I thought of it, when my brother-in-law was explaining everything to me, and I thought of the solution, I had no money, so I needed to make money, right? I learned how to do installations. I telematics, GPS installations, camera installations on fleet vehicles. I learned how to do that. After like 6 months of doing that proactively, I moved on and I created my second business, which was Veterans Fleet Management. That was an installation company. So we specialized in installations. We did that in Florida and in several other states across the US. And it was a standard, typical, traditional installation company, like everybody else was doing, right? But it helped me generate enough revenue to actually start building out the technology, right, of textbook. And that's when I started kind of, after probably about 1 year of the installation services, I started building out the technology. We built out mobile applications for the technicians to utilize within the field. Um, we built out an interface for the back office for our internal team. We built out an enterprise booking solution. So those large telematic companies or large enterprise customers, they can schedule technicians directly without the intermediaries of the installation companies. So no more picking up all of the phones and sending out the emails and none of those things, right? And then we also created a direct booking interface. That direct booking interface actually is actually for the end user customer. So Stuart, even if you bought a dash cam and you want that dash cam installed on your vehicle, or you bought it on Amazon, you can go onto Textbook and schedule a local technician to come to you and actually install it professionally.
And you handle the payment and then the connection to the local tech?
Yep. Yep. And everything is streamlined within the interface. And even when the technician has completed all of his work, showcasing kind of what he did on his forms, you get that information in your interface to kind of show, hey, look, this is all the work that he did.
So would you say that your game-changing moment was what you learned about yourself while you were in service?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. There's been a few, I call them pivot points.
Yeah.
There's been a few pivot points in my life, but yeah, for sure. That was definitely one of them.
Okay. So, David, everybody hits bumps in the road along the way. Can you tell us about a time that you've hit one in your career and how you dealt with it? Maybe it was also a game change moment, but maybe it was just a challenge. You said you had a great idea, but took you another year or so to get the money. But tell us about a bump in the road and how you navigated it.
Yeah, so I would say, one of the bumps in the road that were, kind of in this segment that you're talking about, right? The installation company was primarily, when we started, we was primarily based in Florida. We just had technicians in Florida. We didn't branch out into other states or anything like that. And I know that, once again, I wanted to develop these applications, and I wanted to move forward with creating this technology, but essentially I needed the funds to do that, right? And when I kind of started thinking the more traditional route of like the technology industry, right? Oh, well, I'll see if I can get funding, right? And I went, I got a pitch deck. I made it all pretty. So I explained it to the best of my ability. A lot of the things too, right? Like you start with this vision of this overview of what you're gonna do, and then it starts kind of taking a life of its own at some point once you keep adapting and adapting and adapting. But I spoke to one investor, and after I spoke to that one investor, I said, nah, I'm not going to do this anymore.
What did the investor say to you?
Not much. Not much. And maybe it was me, right? Maybe it was I didn't have everything lined up enough for him to be excited. I'm not sure, but I just knew that it was not something that I wanted to continue to. It wasn't a path I wanted to continue to travel, right? So I said, well, I got to make money though, right? Like I'm still having that issue of making enough money to actually go off on creating and developing the technology. So I took a step back and I pushed forward with expanding out. And we expanded out into different states, New York, New Jersey, Chicago, Atlanta, and North Carolina. Those are the places we expanded out to and kind of targeted. And we had some challenges because of the growth, right? But we overcame. We started developing the technology, and that technology actually, that technology puts us in a different place in regards to ensuring quality, right? We essentially have internal processes to make sure that everybody's doing what they're supposed to be doing. So it really has enhanced the experience for the technicians, for the end user customers, for the enterprise customers, because we've had tremendous success with the enterprise customers that use us, especially with their internal cost reduction, right? That's been pretty significant. And even for the large fleets, right? Those large enterprise customers, they like it because they don't have to go through so many different intermediaries, right? Intermediaries. So I would say that probably was a significant challenge that we overcame.
Is most of your business these days consumer or B2B?
Um, it's uh it's mostly B2B. Because even when you look at telematics, right? Telematics is they're smaller companies, but and the smaller companies essentially we support on the direct booking side, right? They have that consumer feel of technology.
Are y'all still doing installations?
Us, we don't do installations. Essentially, we're a marketplace for specialized technicians. So the technicians are on there, they're looking for work, and then these people are looking for work to get completed, and we're just pairing them with one another.
Are you selling the equipment or you're just a marketplace?
Nope, just a marketplace.
All right. Interesting. What a world, technology makes.
Yeah, no kidding.
So it becomes a marketing operation. People find you,
Yeah,
and you put them together with the guys who can get done what they want done. That's fabulous. So
yes.
um, everybody in business has to keep current and learn new things. And how do you do that?
Taking a step back, getting outside of the operational things, and thinking on the macro scale. Thinking about the things, especially when you're talking about technologies moving so quickly, right? Thinking about how to essentially um, integrate new technologies to get to the point where we can be more efficient internally and be able to provide um, an overall better service, right, from all sides.
Okay. Any particular favorite books or podcasts that you listen to that you feel like help you stay current? You don't have to say this podcast. So, any sources you want to share that you go to help you stay sharp?
Yeah, honestly, I listen to probably a lot of podcasts that are kind of on the political side. And then as far as books are concerned, a lot of the books that I read are probably of things that I need to learn within the time.
Yeah.
So if it's like a marketing book or there was a book that I liked. I forgot the name of it. I couldn't tell you, but there was a book that I liked that it was actually really long, and it was actually about like how to pitch to investors and stuff like that. It was a really good book. I actually listened to it
There's
twice.
a bunch of those out there too. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. I think that's what most of us do. We need to learn something and we go find a book about it.
Yep.
So, this is the Growth, Grace, and Prosperity podcast. We like to ask our guests about what they do with their investable money outside their business, not looking for any dollar amounts or account numbers or anything like that. How do you invest the money that you've generated from your business? Are you into crypto? Are you buying CDs or double E bonds? And tell us what you do with that.
Um, I find myself reinvesting into the company for the majority of the time. Um, I place a lot of I put a lot of stake within like wanting to excel the company, right? Um, so I want to say when you talk about investments, I probably invest more in the company than anything outside of it because I know I have control of its success, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's probably where I put my money, quite frankly.
Yeah, that's about what 80% of our entrepreneurs say, and
No
it
kidding.
makes sense. Uh, you know, I try to, given my business, I try to encourage them that you need to start looking for streams of income outside the business. Easy for me to say. I've been on both sides, and you know, until you get that business where you want it, you're going to keep investing in it
Yep.
until you get it there. So no, that's about what 80% of our guests say. So last question: David, if you were mentoring someone, or if you had somebody just wanted to follow in your footsteps, what one piece of advice would you give them?
One piece of advice that I would give somebody wanting to follow within my footsteps, be resilient.
What does that mean?
You know, there's a lot that's going to come at you from all angles. Learn how to embrace the suck and carry on.
That's a good one. Embrace the suck. Yeah. I love that. Yeah. I just, like I said, yeah, I've heard that different way. Just you got to be dedicated to your dream.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, and no matter what's coming at you, and if you let little things come at you that knock you off your game or off your focus, then perhaps that's not your dream, or perhaps you're not the one to fulfill that dream. I love that.
Yeah, definitely.
Well, thank you again so much for taking your time to be here. And we really do appreciate it. And I think the guests will learn a lot from what you've said. And to our audience, we thank you for watching this episode of the Growth, Grace, and Prosperity podcast. We hope you'll come back and watch the next episode. So thank you very much.
Thanks for tuning in to the Growth, Grace, and Prosperity podcast. If you'd like to be a guest, visit growthgraceprosperity.com/guest. We'd love to hear your story.